This is a video for AQA Discrete Mathematics, Critical Path Analysis, Section 2.3, Constructing Resource Histograms. Well, so far in the work we've been doing, we've really not considered that some activities may need more workers to do them than others. We've always considered that each activity is really only requiring one person. However, that's not going to be true in practice. So a resource histogram is used to show the number of workers that might be needed at every stage of the project. Similar to a Gantt chart, it's produced on a timeline, but we now put in rectangles where the height of the rectangle is equal to the number of workers for each of the activities. And once we've got it, we can then look at how those resources might need to be adjusted to allow us to look at problems that may occur within the project, or it might be that we don't have sufficient workers available at certain times of the project. Well, we'll start by considering a project where indeed each activity only requires one worker. But of course, because some activities can take place at the same time as each other, then it will affect the total number of workers that we need at any part of the project. We start by putting in a rectangle which represents the critical path. So here it is. Now we can split it up into its parts because A takes 2 hours, so this is A. C takes 6 and takes us up to 8, that's C. E goes up to 17. G up to 20. I up to 23. K up to 26, and then at the end we've got L. Once the critical activities are on the diagram, we can then start putting in the non-critical ones. We tend to do those in alphabetical order, although it doesn't actually matter. So we can see that B can start at 2 and has duration 3. So if we put it in at its earliest time, then starting at 2 with duration 3 takes us up to time 5. And that will be the rectangle for B. D, we can see the diagram, has got duration 7 and can start at 2. So D can fit on top of B for the first 3 hours, but then has to slot underneath, and we need another 4 hours from D, so that will take us up to an early finish time of 9. So notice how the rectangle for D is split into 2 parts. What we don't want is it hanging over the top, so there are no holes in a resource diagram. So we're looking at the number of workers, and we can see therefore that at time between time 3 and 4, for example, in this section here, we'll need a total of 3 workers. Once D is in, we can move on to F. Now F can start at time 9 and is duration 4, so F will take us from 9 up to time 13. And then we've got a break then while the critical activities go on until we get to H, which can start at time 20 with duration 2, so H can sit in here. J can start at 22, duration 2. And there we are, that's all of our activities in there, worth going through: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, making sure you've got them all. But that's our completed resource histogram when we have each activity taking one worker. So we can, as I said, read off from there. For example, we had 3 workers at time 3 required, But if we come down to time 15 to 16 here, we can see that we only require one worker at that particular part of the project. Now that would allow you to then decide on the number of workforce that you need to allocate to this project at any particular time. So there's a nice neat version of it. But remember, this was one worker needed for each activity, and that in general is not going to be very realistic because some activities are going to require more workforce than others. So here's a second example. It's the same activity network, but this time we're considering when we need different numbers of workers. So we can see here we've now got a new table being introduced where we've got the number of workers for each activity. The process is basically the same, however. We start off by putting in the critical path activities, but this time the height of the rectangles, instead of just being 1 from beginning to end, will go up and down depending on the number of workers. So for example, A requires 5 workers, so that will be a rectangle of length 2 and height 5, or width 2 and height 5. So it comes up to time 2 and we'll have height 5. So A starts off by being in this position here. The next activity is C. C is only height 2 and duration of 6, so it's going to go up to 8. And there is C in there. And so we continue doing the critical activities first. E goes up to time 17 and is going to need to be height 3. So we can put in E in here. And so on through G, I, K and L. So this is the situation reached once we've got the critical activities in on the diagram. Now we can look at the non-critical activities as before. So we go back to B and we can see that B has got a duration of 3. So it starts at time 2 with duration 3 and it needs 3 workers. So the block for B will be width 3 and height 3 and fits in here. D, on the other hand, is duration 7. It can start at 2 as well, and D is height 3. So we can start off with D first of all fitting in the first 3 hours in this position here, but then we need another 3 hours height 3, which would fit here, and then finally another single hour of height 3 which fits on top of E. So you can see there that D, quite complex, it's made up of 3 parts, but each of those parts is height equal to 3, and we've got a total duration there of 7 hours. Moving on to F. F can start at time 9, which is where we're up to here. It's got a duration 4, so it will be a width 4. And F needs to be height 2, needs 2 workers. So F fits in like this. Then we can now jump forward to H. So H can start at time 20, which is this point here. It's width 2, duration 2, and needs 2 workers, so it's height 2. So H fits in at that point. I is on the critical path, so now we're moving forward to J. J is duration 2, starts at 22, duration 2, and needs 3 workers. So notice that J is going to split as well. The first part of it is there, that's 1 day, height 3. And then the next day, height 3 is there. So that's duration 2 and height 3 for J. And there we are, there's our diagram finished, and that shows the number of workers at any stage of the project. So there it is rather neatly. So we can see, for example, at this particular time here, this project requires a total given by the height here, which is 8. So we would need 8 workers at that time. And then later on in the project, here we only require a total of 2 workers. So this will allow us then to answer questions like, well, what happens if instead of 8 workers, there are only 6 workers available? And that's what we'll be doing in the next video, which looks at something called leveling resources.